Aloha and welcome if you're joining us online, and aloha and welcome if you're joining us in person. Thank you for being here tonight. I have a few announcements first, and then we'll start our sitting. So, our usual announcements. I talked to you for a moment out there, but there is a restroom out in the hallway there in the foyer. There are a couple of locks on it. Just so you know, there's a slide lock and there's a door lock. If you use the door lock, unlock it when you leave, because if you don't, you can get out, but it'll lock behind you and we'll have to go punch the code in, which is not a big issue, but it's that way. Also, Amy, my co-teacher, isn't here tonight. And the reason we set up all this streaming equipment is mostly because she lives in Alaska. And so we put her on a television over there most of the time, but she's flying back to Hawaii tomorrow, so she won't be here tonight. What other announcements do I have? The Bodhi Tree has been very generous to us. They do not charge us for being here. And Amy and I do not accept dana, which is gratitude or offerings. But if you find this space helpful to you, there is a box out in the foyer if you wish to contribute to the work of the Bodhi Tree. Otherwise, it's fine. This is free. You do not need to do that. But if you're so moved, you might. The other thing that's happening, there's a lot happening next week. There are a lot of sittings here. There's a sitting on Monday night, the first couple of weeks of Tuesday, so that won't be happening next week. Wednesday night, of course, you're here this week, and Amy and I are here most Wednesdays. Thursday, there's nothing going on at the moment, and then Friday night, I teach here a class we're about halfway through, but you're more than welcome to come. Next week, Friday, or this week, Friday, I'll be talking about metta or loving kindness. And if that doesn't mean anything, that's fine. But next week's a special schedule. There's a visiting monk from Uganda, Bante, which is an honorific sort of teacher, Buddha Rakita. And he's the first Ugandan-born monk. And he's done a lot of work in Uganda with people who've been displaced through the wars there and the other things that have happened. But he will be here not this weekend, but next weekend, the 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th, for a half-day retreat. No, a whole non-residential retreat. So if you want to come and spend most of the day meditating Saturday and Sunday, should be a flyer out there, or you can ask me more. But he may also be teaching the Monday night session here, which is 6:30, and he may be teaching the Wednesday night session in my place and Amy's place next week. And that would be at 6 o'clock. There's no cost. Please feel free to come to either, both, whoever's here. He won't be doing the Friday because that is sort of a class and people have said they can be here for the 4 weeks or whatever it is. So that's it. So welcome. Really glad you're here. How we start every week, just so you know the format, is we'll do a little mindful movement just to get our bodies loosened up. It's, the middle of the week. Most of us work and it can be, it's time to shake it out a little. Then we'll have a first sitting of about 20 minutes. And it will be guided. We're not just going to sit and do nothing without guidance. We're going to sit and do nothing with guidance, pretty much. And then there'll be about a 7-minute break. And then we'll come back and I'll give a little talk on something or another. And we'll have a second sitting that relates to that talk till about 7:20. And then if people have questions, I cut off the stream then. So nothing you share personally will ever be heard by anybody other than who's in the room. And then if you have questions or wish to share something, we can do that. That sound good? All right. So let's get up and move a little. So we'll start just by standing comfortably with our feet perhaps hip width apart, just allowing ourselves to be steady. If you can, keep your knees loose so that we're not standing up rigid. We're just keeping them a little bouncy, but not down here. Letting our arms dangle. One of my teachers says, think about that you have an egg under your arms. So they're not way out, but they're not tight against your body. We're just standing here. We can let our belly drop. I'm the only one on camera. It's the only belly people will see. And we can take a nice deep breath in and let it go slowly. And allow ourselves to feel the connection with the earth, connection with the floor, that sense of steadiness. Just allowing ourselves to settle into what would really be a standing meditation posture, which I may talk about a little. All right. Once we're relaxed and grounded and settled, let's just begin by shaking a little. Just shake our hands. Just let the muscles be loose. Sort of flappy, like we're... What was the movie where the lady's fingers turned into spaghetti? It's a wonderful movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once, yeah. And just allow the shaking to move up as if the rest of our bodies, our arms are turning into wet spaghetti. My grandmother said, if you don't behave, I'll beat you with a wet noodle. And we can just allow the shaking into our whole body, just kind of moving every muscle gently. We don't want to hurt ourselves, so if there's anything that's painful, stop. Don't do it. Don't overdo it. All right, and just slow down. Now this one requires a little balance, so be careful. And if you're not good on your tippy toes, be real careful. What we're going to do is we're going to take our hands and just put them on our hips, sort of straight up and down. And we're not going to worry about our breathing, but you could do this in time with your breath. We're going to rise up on our toes and then settle back on our heels and let our toes wiggle a little. See if we can get them off the ground. And do the same again. Up on our tippy toes and rock back. Again, always careful of our balance. One more time. All right. And just come to a rest again. Next, let's take our hands, get them nice and warm, and put them over our kidneys if we can, in the back, so that our hips are kind of pushed out. Just a little. There's a bowl there. And we're going to do the same thing. Up on our tippy toes and back. Wiggle our toes. And up and back and up and back and come to a rest again. You can do this many more times at home. Usually 10 repetitions is what I do of each. Okay. Let our arms droop again. Now the next one is exactly the same thing, except this time, take our hands about sternum, out like we're hugging a tree. And in this, we can feel our back being bowed to the back rather than to the front. Now we're sort of bowing to the back, and again, up and back and up and back. Always making sure we can maintain our balance. Up and back and settle. And now this one, let's take our hands into a prayer position. And this one comes from medical Qigong. And you don't need to believe anything, it can just be movement. But often they talk about qi or energy. So we're going to smooth out a line of energy down our front. It can be in our back, it can be in the front, down our center, by simply imagining we're straightening it out, we're smoothing it, moving our hands up a little and back down. Seeing if we can feel the energy between our palms. Just smoothing very gently. And each time we go a little higher. A little higher. A little over our head. Up as high as we can go. Almost as if we're tapping a bell above us. And down. And all the way up again. And stay there. And just let all that energy go. Let our arms come back down. Okay. One more time, we're going to make sure we don't injure ourselves because we're going to sort of flop over a little. So if you have a bad back, be careful. And this is not about exercise and touching our toes. But what we want to do is take our hands and lift them up as if we're pushing against the sky. Take a nice deep breath in. And then as we exhale, allow ourselves to drape forward gently, being very careful of our backs until we're just dangling here. We don't have to touch the floor or our toes. Letting our arms droop, letting our head droop. Just relaxing. And then taking another deep breath in. On our exhale, come up, but use our legs to rise, not our back. And just allow ourselves to stand gently again. Checking in with our body, seeing how it feels. And then one more time in, breathing in, and up, press against the sky. Really stretching up. We don't need to get on our toes, but just feel ourselves pushing. Inhale, and then gently exhaling. And just resting, dangling comfortably. And then taking a deep breath in and coming up slowly on the exhale, using our legs gently so we don't injure ourselves. And once again, just standing. Letting ourselves settle. And when we're comfortable, mindfully making our way back to our seat for our first sitting. All right. If we're unfamiliar with sitting, we might wish to get our feet grounded with the floor. We might want to have our back relatively straight in a position that we can be comfortable for about 20 minutes and yet aware. We're going to be practicing tonight a little with energy, sort of how we did in the beginning with the movement, but feeling how different states of sitting might affect our energy. Often people come to meditation for relaxation, which is wonderful, and sometimes it isn't found. And sometimes even teachers get sleepy, and sometimes we fall asleep. So we're going to practice what that might feel like, what the differences are in a couple of different ways of practice. So I always like to start, if you're comfortable with your eyes closed, that's fine. That's how I sit. And I always like to take a few nice deep breaths in, holding briefly, and exhaling a little more slowly than I took my breath in. We're not going to do this for the whole sitting. This is just to begin some physiological relaxation and settling. On another deep breath in, you might want to wiggle and get out any tightness in our body if we can. Just allowing our breath completely to exhale and taking another big breath in, biggest yet. Holding for the longest time. And exhaling as slow as we can without being uncomfortable. And then letting our breath return to normal. Simply allowing our awareness perhaps to settle into our heart space, just as we're allowing our body to settle into our chair or cushion. Just coming to a stop. There's nothing to fix, hopefully nothing to adjust. But if you do need to move, please do. Perhaps just do it mindfully. If there's an area of discomfort, certainly we can do what we can to relieve it, but mindfully. And let's just spend a minute sitting and knowing we're sitting. Our posture, as Joseph Goldstein might say, dignified and alert, yet relaxed. I like to think of my spine as a stack of quarters, not in a paper roll rigid. It's simply stacked up, a little wobbly here and there, but standing tall. We might now simply explore how our internal weather is. What am I feeling? Do I have a mood? Are thoughts just chattering away? Are there areas of comfort and perhaps less than comfort in my body? Is this pleasant or neutral, perhaps even unpleasant? What is the energy like in my body? Am I calm? Am I tired? Just checking in. Curious. We needn't explain anything. We needn't tell stories about what we're feeling. Just allowing ourselves to notice what's here. Thoughts arise. We might be distracted. It's very normal. Nothing to worry about. It's just how we are. As soon as we've noticed, we return to sitting. And now that we've checked in with our weather, let's see what adding a little energy might do to our weather. If your eyes have been closed, let's gently open them, half lidded, looking down at the ground, not really focusing, just allowing a little more light in. And again, check our weather. How is this different? If your eyes were open before, you might close them now. But if you had your eyes closed at the beginning, let's just leave them open for a minute or two as we're curious about how this feels. We are not telling stories about what we see, picking things out. It's simply another sense door open in our awareness. Do I feel more energy? Less? Is it the same? And now, after exploring with our eyes open, If you're comfortable, let's close them again. And again, explore with curiosity. Is this again different? Sounds arise. We might note hearing. We needn't tell a story about what it is. Just being aware of what is arising, how we feel internally, our weather. Having settled again, we might try one more exploration into energy and how we feel. Carefully and mindfully, and I do it with my eyes opening, we might stand. Just as we did in our movement, just gently standing, our belly relaxed, our knees relaxed, probably our eyes open for balance. And again, explore. How does this feel? Do I feel more energy, less? What is this like? always with curiosity, exploring what does it feel like to stand? What sensations are present? Do I feel tired, more energy, the same? All are fine. And for the last few minutes of this meditation, if we choose, we might sit down again or remain standing. Continue exploring with curiosity what sensations are present. And allowing ourselves one more check of the weather. Has my experience changed? Eyes open, eyes closed, standing, sitting. What is different? What is the same? Keeping it in our bodies. In a moment, I'll invite the bell to ring 3 times. There's no need to hurry back. Just allow the sound of the bell to enter our meditation. Another sound, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, whatever it may be, simply allow it to be present. Thank you. So that was a meditation with a little adjustment. If we were tired, we might notice something different. We might not. It's all good. But in general, if we are of a nature to fall asleep, opening our eyes might help us be a little more aware. And I know on retreat, when I go on retreat and spend hours and hours sitting, we often can get tired or stiff, and standing is perfectly acceptable as well. And perhaps we'll even bring a little more energy late in the evening. And it's good to remain alert, because that's when we notice things. That's when we can tell the difference between what we're imagining and what's truly present. And in the next section, my talk will be on equanimity or balance. And if we're not aware of that, we can drift into indifference and not caring, in a sense. I'll talk about that. But when we're alert, we can be more present. So we're going to take about a 7-minute break. If you wish to walk around, the lanai is available. There's, like I said, water in the hallway. And there's a restroom if you need a bio break. And I will call us back with a bell. Welcome back. So good to have everybody here. I wish Amy were here. She said she might be, but she also said she might not. And she's flying back to Hawaii tomorrow. So she was a little tied up tonight putting everything in order before she leaves. So I don't know how that landed for you, but did everybody feel some differences in energy between sitting with eyes closed, eyes open, and perhaps standing? Yeah, it's there are simply different states depending on what we're doing. And if we want to be alert, often we need to add a little bit of energy because especially at night, I can fall asleep pretty easily. I had a long day. I got up at 4. I'm kind of done, you know. So I'll often sit here when I do this or with other teachers and just with my eyes open. Both are good. And you want to stress, there's no right posture for meditation. You do not need to have your eyes closed. You do not need to have them open. You do not need to be seated. You don't need to be in a lotus position. What we do probably want, though, is to be alert to some degree in most of this, just so that we can be aware of what's going on. So I'm going to talk about equanimity, which is sort of the balance between whatever. I'll explain it a little more, but why this came up, I was in the bookstore down at the shopping center, and I always check the poetry section. And this is going to sound a little morbid, but it's really not. I found a book of Japanese death poetry, and it's Jisei, Jisei. And it's a long-standing tradition in poets and Zen masters and samurai as they approach the end of their life to write a poem. And this is not so that we can think about death tonight. It's a fine meditation topic, but that isn't the point. What I was struck by was the sense of balance in the poem with the idea of being okay with what's present at the moment. And they're very short, and they don't always mention death. There is actually a particular form therein, though often haiku. And I'm going to read a couple first, just so we get an idea of what's in them. So here's one by Busan, who is a famous poet and affected haiku, maybe even more than Basho. I did not know this till I read this, but there you go. Of late the nights are dawning, plum blossom white. That's what he wrote before he died. It is something. The running stream is cool, the pebbles underfoot. It lights up as lightly as it fades, a firefly. And this is what they're cultivating, even as death approaches. This sense of balance, this sense of poetry, of rightness, in a sense. And that is sort of what I think when we talk about equanimity, the sense of being okay with what's going on. That's something I think we can cultivate. So often, I don't want to harp on the death angle of this. I love the book. It's given me a real insight into things. But in the Pali word for equanimity is upekkha, and it's sort of staying steady with what's happening, regardless of what's happening, not being pushed one way or the other in the experience of it, meeting the moment without craving or averseness, just being present with it. And it's not passivity or resignation. In fact, it can be very useful to develop this sense of equanimity because it isn't not caring. It can be deeply caring. But imagine that we get angry at something that's happened, and all of a sudden, I'm going to fix this. You may be making a terrible mistake in that you are not acting out of a grounded moment. You're acting out of anger and out of being pushed around by this situation. And I don't know about you, but I make my worst decisions when I'm being pushed around by circumstances. When I can stop and settle, then I can be, okay, this is not a good situation. How do I make this better? Or this is a lovely situation. How do I enjoy it? Right? It isn't passivity. It's not indifference. It's not I don't care what happens. It's I care deeply what happens, deeply enough that I am simply going to be present with it. And there's lots of examples of this to varying degrees just in life, not having anything to do with death poetry. Um, when you're stuck in traffic, and our traffic here is among the worst. How are we? Are we able to just be, I'm stuck in traffic. This is how it is. Or is it, why don't these people move? I'm so angry at them. Why did I come out this time of night? What's up with this? Right? Even though it's like this every day and we know it's present, we can get really caught up in it. But I have a friend who I'm simply amazed is people can cut him off and this, that, and the other thing, never gets phased. He's just like, that's how it is. It's incredible. I like driving with him. And if you've ever raised children, I haven't, so I can't speak from experience, but I have babysat a lot of children. And they're starting to have a meltdown. It doesn't help if we melt down with them, even if we want to. And being sick. Sometimes we just have to be present with it. We're going to take medicine or see a doctor or whatever we need to do, but it isn't going away in the next 30 seconds. And wishing that it weren't here isn't helping. And suffering with it doesn't help a lot either. I talk a lot about having my knees replaced a couple of years ago, and it was a painful experience. And I knew at the end of it, it would be better, right? But it wasn't at that moment. And so I had to develop this sense of equanimity, of upekkha, that this is how it is today. This is what I'm experiencing. And I don't have to like it. That sense of equanimity is not about liking something. And it's not about disliking it or liking it. It's simply that this is what is. This is what's happening. There is it's kind of a long term, but the Brahma Vihara Sutta, the Buddha's teaching on this, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I'll get the quote wrong, and I don't speak Pali, so we're not doing it in the Pali language. But the quote is something like, "A mind like the earth, not shaken by contact with the pure or the unpure." Now, I know that sounds really funny here because we just had that earthquake. And I don't know how many of you felt it, but the earth was shaking. So something can shake the earth. But that was a 6.0 earthquake on the Richter scale. So but the earth absorbs my stupidity for the most part. Um, it will be here long after all of us. It may be here long after everything except, cockroaches and rats and viruses. Um, and it will still be the earth. So it's just that ability to receive things without immediately needing to react. Other times that this might come up is like I do long distance cycling, and often that means I'm 50, 60 miles between towns. Like the next motel is 70 miles away, and by mid-afternoon, I really want the ride to be over, because the last 5 miles of any ride like that are always torture, even if they're short. It's weird, but it's not over. And I can either be all upset about it not being over, or I can simply get on with what I'm doing. Or washing the dishes. When we wash the dishes, can we just be with the warmth of the water? Or are we going to stand there and go, why didn't I do this sooner? Why is this chunked on here? I've got to change how and it just becomes this thing we do in our mind, this selfing, this telling ourselves stories that make things more painful when we don't need to. I could be going, why did my screensaver go on just then when I'm using this? So a lot of the practice for upekkha or equanimity in meditation, when we practice it, because that, of course, is our gym, if you will, where we can explore this with little things. It can sometimes be hard, right? We'll have distractions. I did not like the sound of that power equipment out there, and yet it was there. What could I do about it? I could accept that it's here. And again, I didn't have to like it, but there's nothing I can do from this room to change it. So that's that sense of just simply being with whatever's present. And in meditation, we remove most distractions. So the little ones can seem pretty big, actually. Right? That sound wouldn't have bothered me at all if I were busy working and flowing and working on I wouldn't even noticed it. But of course, since we're sitting here quietly, it comes up. And sometimes feelings in our body are more vivid than they might be if we're busily engaged, right? I start noticing a throbbing in my knee, which I probably wouldn't notice if I were standing at the stove cooking dinner, because I'd be focusing on cooking dinner. And so it can actually be really tough to develop equanimity, a sense of equanimity in sitting. And that's actually great, because that's the practice, that's the training. So one of the reasons we were practicing with energy is so that we can be aware of whether something's pulling us or pushing us, whether we're averse to it, whether it's pleasant, what's happening, and can I be with this for just this breath? So this is how it is right now, is the phrase I use a lot. One more poem. This is by the famous poet Ryokan before he passed. Showing up, I start to walk. Leaving, I turn to look back. The path remains. There's no fear. There's no clinging. There's no pushing it away. There's just that upekkha, that equanimity expressed in that poem. So it isn't the absence of difficulty, it's the absence of struggling with the difficulty. And again, that doesn't mean not trying to fix it, but that just means giving up that intense emotional over it in that sense that can throw us off being with it. Doesn't mean get rid of emotions. I still don't like a lot of things in the world. And I think it's good to be emotional about them and to feel them. But acting from a center of equanimity, I think we can be a little better off. Thich Nhat Hanh is not in this lineage, but see his picture out there. He's very famous for saying that when Vietnam War ended, many people had to leave. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, some of the people who created the Bodhi Tree. And they often left by boat on the South China Sea. And I've lived in the South China, well, not in the sea, but in that area of the world. And there's lots of storms, typhoons. I never met any, but there are pirates to this day, all through Southeast Asia and through those waters. And he would say when people left on the boats in the storms and facing pirates, if one person could maintain their equanimity, the boat would be saved. But if all lost their equanimity, the boat would be lost. Because it takes that sort of allowing what's real to be present, to be able to be with things. So we're going to sit again. So let's get into a comfortable meditation posture. Again, alert. If we'd like our eyes open, that's fine. Grounded with the earth. Our posture, as Joseph would say, dignified. And again, we might take a few breaths in deeply, holding briefly, allowing the breath to empty completely, just settling in, nothing to fix, nowhere to go, no one to be. Just feeling our contact points with the floor and our chair, whatever our hands are on. Just whatever's present. And in this sitting, we might find an anchor. And by that, I mean a sensation or sounds, hearing, something that we can find easily. Often this will be the breath, rising and falling in a particular spot, or it could simply be our point of contact with the earth and our sits bones or our feet. We can allow ourselves to spend a moment, a minute, getting acquainted with this anchor. What's present? What do I feel? We're simply allowing this to be a place we can return to easily if distracted or caught up in a story. Again, allowing our awareness to settle into our body, just as we've allowed our body to settle into our chair, resting, stopping. And staying with our body, we might ask ourselves, if sensations arise, can I be with this for just this breath? If we feel the need to move, we might mindfully, but before we do, we might ask, can I be with this for just this moment? And observe how the sensation changes. And then, if we need to, we move. With each sensation, thought, or sound, we might ask ourselves, am I being pulled by this or pushed by it? Or is it just arising? And if pulled away, we return to our anchor, begin again, smiling, because we noticed we were pulled away. That's mindfulness. If being aware of our breath is comfortable, and it isn't for everybody, we might follow an entire breath, not by demanding we breathe or controlling it. We breathe just fine on our own. Our body's good at it. But being aware that a single breath is much like a life. It arises on its own and departs. No two breaths are exactly alike. Can I be with just this breath? If a pleasant sensation arises, can I enjoy this without clinging? If an unpleasant sensation arises, can I be with this without pushing it away? Always remembering if we need to, we can adjust, but allow ourselves to be present with it and mindfully adjust rather than being pushed by it or pulled. In the last few minutes of this sitting, allow ourselves to be present and open to all. If we're distracted, so be it. That's how it is. Again, shortly I will invite the bell to ring. There's never a need to hurry back. We just allow the sound of the bell to be present. However it may affect, just being with it. Thank you for your practice. And if you've been watching at home, thank you for yours. We'll be ending the stream now and hope to see you again.